Good afternoon to my friends, enemies, family, and foes. I am very excited to have a great friend of mine today, and his name is Brihat Mridanga Das. I'm going to have him introduce himself because he is a great speaker, and I don't want to butcher anything. So let's get right into it. Take it away.
Thanks for having me here, Michael. Yeah, my born name is Gabriel, and I did a spiritual initiation in the Hare Krishna movement. So that's why I have a different little foreign sounding name now. Most people just call me Brihat. That's how Mike knows me. And yeah, I am currently living as a monk. I'm living in Houston, Texas, and I'm living in a monastery. It's on a farm, and we are kind of trying to present the ancient teachings of the Bhagavad Gita to people in the West, because it's not a Hindu thing. It's something for really everyone. And it's totally changed my life. And so I'm some would call fanatical. But anyway, this is a little intro.
So
I'm 27.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So what were you doing before you decided you wanted to pursue a spiritual life in the Hare Krishna movement?
Well, first I was born. No, the main significant thing on a material level is that I was pursuing my education. So I finished a bachelor's degree in mathematical economics in 2016 from Colorado College. And then I didn't see the point in going straight into getting a career because I had no meaning in my life. So that kind of started my search.
Yeah. So you were in college, you got this degree, you did all these classes, but something was telling you that getting a career in a economics area wasn't something you were pursuing, like it wasn't calling you.
It just looked super boring. Why would I want to go sit in an office for the majority of my time to get money to come back to a place where, what am I really going to be doing there? I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, so why should I pursue that?
So where are you now? What were you doing in college where you said this is something that I want to pursue now instead of a career in an office building, crunching numbers all day?
Well, I was starting to develop some faith in a higher power. I wasn't so interested in religion, but I could understand that there was some intuition or some spiritual connection inside of myself. So I listened to that, and actually the first thing that I really followed my internal guidance in my whole life was when I was just about to finish college, and in my heart it was so clear that I need to leave this relationship. I was in a committed relationship for 2 years, and I knew I needed to be alone for some time to understand myself better.
Touching on your comments on a higher power, when COVID started, I was still very atheistic. I didn't really view the universe as something greater than myself. I kind of viewed the world through a lens of I am a star of my own movie, and everything going on is just has to revolve around me. And if it doesn't, then what's the point?
You're a
And I
star in
remember,
my eyes.
yeah, thank you so much. You're a star in my eyes. You're the North Star, always guiding me. But yeah, I remember I was in quarantine at home, and I started reading this book by Russell Brand called Recovery. And he brings up how if you want to navigate through this life honestly, you don't have to look at a higher power as a Christian God or an Islamic God or a Hinduist God necessarily. just through the lens that there is something greater than you that we have to acknowledge and live by and respect, so that we can kind of not only humble ourselves, but treat the world around us better. So what do you say to people that maybe struggle with looking at the idea of a higher power as not just a human deity or a deity of itself, but maybe a universalist approach or anything other than that? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good reason that people shy away from thinking about God, because at least for me, the people who were telling me about God were standing on a pedestal outside of my university and saying, "You're going to hell for doing this, you're going to hell for doing that."
Mm-hmm.
So then you get this idea that that's who God is, that God is just some judgmental person just condemning everyone. So that's one reason. And then another reason that doesn't make sense to many people is, why would there be only one way to connect with God? Why is it only if you call yourself a Christian? Or why is it only if you call yourself Muslim? It doesn't seem to make sense if God is for everybody. Why should it only be one way?
Mm-hmm. That's what originally started pushing me away from religion when I was 12 years old. I started just saying, like, why does it have to be this one thing? And if I don't follow that, I'm looked down upon, I'm going to hell. But then why am I still existing? Like, why am I still like on earth? Why doesn't God just do this with me? Or if I start like calling out and saying like, God, show me you're here, and nothing happens. It's stuff as simple as that that started leading me to have questions. And I started realizing that there is infinite there are infinite possibilities as to what's beyond us, you know? And I wanted to ask you, so what is it in the Hare Krishna movement that is viewed as that God, that higher power that you acknowledge?
Yeah, there's an important distinction, is that people think about the word God in a certain way. And there's also this conception of the absolute truth. So when we're talking about the supreme, we could say supreme means the topmost.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about beyond what most people think of as God. Like we were saying, God is not just a judgmental person who's just condemning everyone to hell. But there's a much more broad understanding of what the absolute truth is, and who the person who might occupy that absolute truth category is. So I can go in detail about that, but that's the basic description.
Go into a little bit of detail before I start going off on other questions. Yeah.
So I've explained this to you before. There are three ways, three aspects of the absolute truth described in these ancient texts. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the most authoritative Vedic teachings from ancient India. And it describes that the absolute truth is manifest as Brahman, the all-pervading, Paramatma, the individual connection with the Supreme in everyone's heart, and three, Bhagavan, who is actually a person. So there's an impersonal aspect of the absolute truth, which people see as like this oneness of consciousness, this white light that's there. But it's described that there is a higher manifestation of the divine, of the Supreme, and that's actually a person.
Mm-hmm. So I want to bring the conversation a little bit more to religion in America. How do you think we are at a point where there is such a fundamentalist Christian right wing portion of the country that is very isolated, that doesn't really follow the scriptures of the Bible, that kind of goes to church every other weekend and looks at people of color as trash or whatever else they would think of people that look different than them. How have we come to that point where those people exist?
Yeah. Well, speaking from these ancient teachings, it's described that this is just what happens in this age. Is that in the same way as you leave a car out and you don't drive it and it starts to degrade over time, it
Mm-hmm.
starts to rust, it gets dirty, trees start to grow inside of it and out of it. So in the same way, over time, the material world just starts to degrade and people's character starts to degrade. So it's described that this time period is one where people will become increasingly materialistic, and basically money is power, might is right. So this is just how the cycle of the world goes. And then it says that eventually this cycle will lead to basically total collapse of society, and then it will rebuild back into a kind of enlightened ideal society.
That's very interesting. Now, I know you told me that before, but I'm kind of tying that into what Karl Marx believed would lead to the rise of communism, was that capitalism, or the materialistic society we live in today, would run its course. And with the materialistic slash capitalistic society, our main goal is to consume and use up as many resources as physically possible to maximize that profit that one is taking in. And that would lead to a moral collapse, because we're learning that consuming everything doesn't make you happy. It would be an overflow of information, and a economic collapse, because we would eventually run out of what we need. And that collapse would kind of lead to a breeding ground for socialistic ideas. And then following that would be communism. And I never really put those two together, but I think that kind of ties in with the idea that society is going to be kind of materialistic for a while and then degrade, as we're seeing today with the structures in America that make it up, infrastructure wise, economically, socially, everything's just collapsing. So what do you think is leading to the moral collapse in America? Like, why do you think there is such a rise in depression and anxiety and fear among people all over the spectrum?
Mm. Well, there's a word called dharma. I'm sure many people know about this word. Dharma means the essence of a thing. So, like the dharma of water is wetness,
Mm-hmm.
but the dharma of sugar is sweetness. If you take the sweetness out of sugar, then what's really left there? It's not sugar. So, in the same way, the human being has a certain dharma, and it is to serve. We're always serving someone, whether it's a boss or a parent or a dog or a government. We're serving somebody, but we're unsatisfied if we're not serving the highest. So naturally, we start to become depressed and anxious because we're serving those who are not meant to be served as the highest. Like a little kid sees its parents as like, generally, and if you have good parents, like, wow, they're like gods to me. But then you grow up and you realize, oh, they're not actually as great as I thought. They've got a lot of faults. So we're unsatisfied unless we're serving the highest. That's the idea.
I think you're spot on with that, because we're not really seeing many people invest time into their health and themselves. It's constantly putting time towards your job or other things that occupy your time that don't give one the time to simply stretch and meditate, or whatever they maybe should do to calm themselves of those stresses that they're feeling. So what are some meditations that you've practiced that kind of helped you calm those nerves, calm those stresses when you felt like the material bounds and hands were just stretching you thin, like a lot of people are today.
Yeah. Well, there's different levels of meditation. If you fix your mind on something in a way that's meditation, so most people use Netflix and it really captures your mind, but
Mm-hmm.
you know what happens, it brings your consciousness down. So generally people practice silent meditation or breathing meditation. That's what I began with, and it was helpful, but it's difficult because you can't focus your mind on something. You know, the breath is a little bit abstract, or
Mm-hmm.
just trying to empty your mind, and is very difficult because our mind naturally wants to focus. So for that reason, mantra meditation certainly is the most powerful that I've ever encountered, especially kirtan, which you've done with
Yes.
me before. So not only is it using mantra, focusing the mind on a mantra, but it's using the power of music, the power of the joy in our heart to express natural, wonderful emotions, but not for some nice celebrity, or not for some loved one, or not for a spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, but for the source of all love. So
Mm-hmm.
that's it, just pulls the greatest joy out of you. And so I've never found an easier way to meditate than through kirtan.
Kirtan. And can you spell that so the audience can check that out?
Yeah, it's Kirtan.
Kirtan. I remember when I first met Brihat, I was at UCF and I told him it was bald people with books. And I was like, those people look cool because everybody else is just like this person with this dead baby on I'm gonna get canceled for that one. A aborted baby on a poster saying abortion is terrible. You are going to hell if you have had an abortion and whatnot. Kind of like what he was describing, very outlandish and polarizing figures that didn't really seem like they were portraying love. And I remember when I met Brihat, he invited me to go to the temple and try kirtan out. And at first I was very nervous. I have never sang before in front of an audience. And it was unfamiliar to me to be saying these words that are from a foreign language. But I remember saying the words Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in an entire group in unison was very uplifting. And with that, I felt a lot of communal joy, the feeling of being around people forming with a common goal and with a common idea of releasing from themselves energies that they did not want. Oh, he just cut out. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about those technical difficulties. We have returned with Brihat, and I'm going to continue what I was saying and lead that into a question. So where I left off before you cut out was me explaining how being part of that group at the Hare Krishna temple, people I didn't know, people I've never seen before, being in an uncomfortable situation, singing a mantra with a foreign language made me feel very included, and it also felt very relieving. So what do you think it is? Like, do you think there has been a loss of community in America, or if you want to talk about society as a whole, you can. But yeah, do you think there has been a loss of community? And that's a big question. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'll let you
totally.
take that
Totally.
one.
I know you know, and from my own growing up, I didn't feel so much a sense of community in my house growing up, just with even my own family. You know, because we'd get together and we'd sit down for dinner or to play a board game, but my parents would just argue with each other. Or you sit down and watch a movie, and you're all kind of just on your own wavelength. You're not really connecting with each other. So we're definitely missing that sense of connection. Like I feel that now. We're both just feels like we're just being sincere. We're not like, oh, we got to go watch a movie together, or oh, we gotta go get some fast food, or we're really trying to understand more about life. And so I feel this real connection with you right now. So I feel this sense of community and what you're doing and in our relationship. So for sure, I mean, it's really unfortunate, but people don't really connect in this world.
I think a lot of people have become very anxious when it comes to having these conversations due to a rise of polarization in our society. Like, just talking to people about who should be president is now this crazy discussion that is off limits at dinner tables and at work and whatever else, when these are things that directly influence our lives. They directly influence my ability to talk with you. If I can't even afford Wi-Fi due to President Biden, making internet more expensive or something like that. Those are real like impacts that people really used to talk about all the time. And now I feel like the shutting off of religion and politics from normal discussion has done a lot to people, because when your conversations only relate to materialism, it's not satisfying. When your friendship with somebody is only, I'm going to buy this video game and let's talk about this video game for hours and hours and hours. It's obviously a bonding thing and people enjoy it, but I feel like there has to be more to people than just the surface of what you can physically see and use. Already in this conversation, we've talked about things that are universally beyond us. And I know a lot of people want to have those discussions, but they feel like they're shut off from having those discussions. So what do you say to people that are maybe afraid to talk about being submissive to a higher power, or talking about political news? How do we make it so that people aren't afraid to have these discussions?
Well, in my experience, if we think we're a material body, if we think we're our mind, our personality, then we're always on the defensive. And there's a sense of self-consciousness that's always with us. So the more I learn about who I actually am, even religious terminology aside, we are consciousness. I believe I'm the source of consciousness as the soul in the body, but even just taking that a step back, if you recognize that you're the one who's conscious, I'm the one who's feeling this body, I'm the one who's noticing that, oh, there's thoughts going on in my head. Oh, I think I'm this person with this personality. If we can step back to that level, we realize I'm actually untouchable. You can say something about me, or you can even create violence on my physical body, but you can't touch me. You can't actually influence my consciousness, which is why meditation is so important. We learn to focus our consciousness and control it. And not that when someone just says, you're a jerk, or you're this, or punches you in the face, you can actually be at a level where you're not affected by that.
And I think one thing I came to realize from discussions with you and also through self-reflection and reading was that it really is like I am occupying this body. Like I have the ability to close my hand, not I am my body itself. Obviously, this is the body I am operating with. I tell it what to do, and it usually I should have control over my thoughts and actions. But I think we're increasingly seeing people kind of being influenced by companies and advertisements that have taken over their thoughts and their actions. People will only think about, the food I'm going to eat later today, or like I said, the video games, they're only, influenced by very abstract materialistic things. So what benefits have you seen from kind of removing yourself from these materialistic items? And
Well, I like what you were saying, that actually these corporations are so brilliant that they know how to manipulate our mind and our senses so that we actually are enslaved to the certain type of pleasure we get from a bag of Doritos or from whatever, Wendy's. And the benefit I've noticed is that I'm less and less enslaved by these unnecessary desires. This world is just filled with unnecessary necessities.
mhm.
so
it's,
I
it's so
just,
many, I'm sorry, so many groups competing for your attention, not even true attention, just to get you to look at something that they want you to purchase. Buy this, you'll be happy. This is the best Big Mac you'll ever eat. Dear, do you need this? Do you want this? It's constantly trying to get you, because you are, once they kind of get a hold of you through your material, not through your mental means, that's all they need, and they'll continue pumping you up to align with the status quo that doesn't, it's very individualistic, very selfish. I'm not going to worry about this person, I'm not going to worry about that person. It's all just, I need to get this for myself, I need to buy a yacht. Oh, if I get a yacht, I'll be happy. As I feel like there has to be more to life than that.
yeah, I just realized something as you were explaining that we actually want to be cheated because we're falling for it. They say that you can be happy by eating this McDonald's, or you can be happy by eating this, or by watching this movie. And we fall for it because we want to find quick, easy pleasure. But if we look at the reality, it takes a little work to get real satisfaction. It takes some work to improve your character. It takes some work to really understand how the world is and who am I. So we want it easy, and that's why we fall for the tricks of the advertising.
One thing I read in The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, I believe his name was that you'll always see in a movie this depressed dad of a family of one or two. He's really hard work and he's really tired, and he goes to the bar and he starts drinking a beer and complaining to the bartender about his life and how everything is falling apart, how he's miserable, how his kids hate him, how his wife is getting ready to divorce him, whatnot. And he basically brings up how it's much easier to do that, to indulge, to get kind of tricked into this consumption of alcohol, not in a celebratory way, in a pity way. If people want to have a beer because they're seeing their dad for the first time after months, that's fine. But it's like people are coming to this bar to explain how their life is terrible. And M. Scott Peck is saying, imagine if you took that time to read a book about how you can be a better father. Imagine if you took that time to just sit there and think, what can I do to treat my wife better? Those things are not really promoted. And that's why we're seeing so many kids, having to go to therapy and having extreme mental issues because their parents didn't really take the time to analyze their own selves and their own actions and the impacts they were having on those kids. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I was thinking that if we're unsatisfied, we're going to go for these self-defeating habits like alcoholism, using these things that are poisonous for our body. And as you were saying, in a very small degree, it's not going to kill us or destroy our life, but these things can totally destroy our lives, and they do destroy people's lives because they are not satisfied without them. So I was thinking of how important it is to find internal satisfaction and real happiness within ourselves. Otherwise, we're just going to be addicted and, again, enslaved by these self-defeating habits.
So I have two more questions for you. And the first one is, what do you want to see happen in this country so that people won't be doing these self-defeating habits? People will be working together as opposed to against each other. What do you want to see happen?
Well, I want people with actual knowledge to be in a leadership position, because materialism is not knowledge, it's ignorance. It's obvious that materialism is not all there is. Otherwise, how can we account for morality?
Mm-hmm.
You know, anyone would agree that killing an innocent person is a bad thing. But if it's just materials, if our bodies are just material elements and who we are is just a body, then why should anyone care? You know, morality is something which is beyond materialism. It's just obvious there's something more than matter.
So do you think people just kind of sitting here having discussions like this would make an impact?
That can help, but if we just use our own mental power to try to understand the truth, we're going to hit many brick walls because our minds are so limited.
Yes.
So we need to, like, there's different types of knowledge, and there's different ways to get different types of knowledge. So if you want to learn about biology, you wouldn't go to a psychology classroom. So in the same way, if we want to know about existential questions, who am I? What's the purpose of my life? Is there a God? Is there something after I die? Then we can't consult materialistic science. That's not a tool which is designed to understand these questions. It cannot understand these questions. And so actually people are great cheaters who are saying that science can actually answer all questions. That's not true. So I want to see that this really unintelligent philosophy, which is so widely spread, is properly put in context, that we need to understand these important questions in life, and we need to approach the proper tools to come to the answers of these questions.
I may have more than two questions for you after what you just said. So I feel like I've been seeing a lot of scientists and a lot of religious believers of any religion kind of at odds with each other. The science saying this is the concrete fact, and religion saying, well, this is how this is how we view it. There's more to it than just the facts, or not the facts, the scientific data. Do you think if scientists and religious institutions actually work together to organize great conclusions about, you know, what is real, what are humans really here to do? You know, I feel like things like that would kind of bring a new perspective on religion, as opposed to a very polarized view that many people have today, which is this is right and this is wrong. You know, if we mysticism and religious beliefs have been occurring since the Egyptians 5,000 years ago, you know, so if we have brilliant minds on one side and brilliant minds on another working together, there could be great perspectives that have never been really touched on really coming about.
My understanding is that material science is a valuable tool. and it should just be used in proper understanding. So definitely, a religious person doesn't need to reject science. I think it's very helpful for creating vaccines or medications or improved living conditions or feeding hungry people. But it's not going to be able to solve the real existential questions of life. And in fact, science can't actually come to any facts. It can come to theories. The best a scientist can say is that we have strong evidence to suggest that this may be true. But as we've seen in the history of science, that can change. People thought the earth was flat, then they found different evidence, and now people generally think the world is round. People didn't believe in evolution, but then there was evidence found and that changed. So science, the truths it comes to are not absolute truths, they're relative truths. And so to think that science can solve the big questions in life is not understanding what is the tool of science. And there's a spiritual science, yoga, and this is the science of understanding our own consciousness. Who am I? And I'm not there yet, but the idea is that one can actually understand the answers to questions like, is there a God?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a unique meaning to my own life? These things. So yeah, both are wonderful, just they need to be used in the right way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that I think you said a scientist doesn't need to disregard a religious person.
I said the opposite,
okay.
but that is also true.
But yeah, a scientist doesn't necessarily need to just disregard a religious person, and a religious person doesn't necessarily need to disregard a scientist, because both of them are trying to kind of come to the same conclusions using a different set of tools to figure out their purpose or whatever else. So what do you think is the future of the Hare Krishna movement?
Well, the founder of this movement, Srila Prabhupada, he said, I want to see all people become happy. So he didn't necessarily want everyone to look like I do with a shaved head and this tilak sacred clay. He was very encouraging of Muslim people chanting their prayers to Allah 5 times a day. And he was supportive of Christians actually following the teachings of Christ. So he wanted to see everyone become happy. So the future of the Hare Krishna movement is a world of people who are happy because they understand that they're not their body. And things come and go in the material world, different leaders, different weather patterns, different, pandemics. But if you know who you are, you feel the satisfaction within yourself, then nothing can touch you. So if people can come to that realization, this will be a wonderful world. No matter what's happening externally. Yeah.
So last question, what do you think is both your future in the Hare Krishna movement and maybe over the next few years?
My future in this movement is I am seriously studying the teachings and implementing them in my life. And I'm teaching them to others, and basically just working on becoming more, getting any hypocrisy out of myself, being totally straightforward, and trying to be pure in what I do. So I'm trying to find purity for myself and share whatever joy I have with others. And there's a second part to the question.
What do you think your future holds?
What do I think my future holds? Well,
that's a big question.
The one thing is for sure is you and I both, at least our bodies are going to die. I don't know when that will be. So I know that's in my future. And my destination beyond that, there are many descriptions of different ways one can go after leaving this current body and situation. But ultimately to leave the material world entirely and return to the original spiritual world, that is the ultimate destination. So that's a big topic, but we can talk about that the next time.
All right. Well, Brihat, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed talking to you. Tell some of the people where they can learn more about you or the Hare Krishna movement or the yoga that you guys do. Where could everybody find anything?
Totally. There is a website for this current project called Bhakti Urban Farm. I can text that to you and you can leave it in a note.
Yeah.
And then also there is a website with general information. It's just called krishna.com, KRISHNA.com.
All right. Brihat, thank you so much for being here. I hope you have an amazing day and
Thank you,
take
Michael.
care.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.